Now, we're going to talk about monitoring practices, which is a good way to help prevent an insect infestation from developing in the first place. Then we'll talk about control measures, because no matter how clean you keep things, how good your monitoring is, sometimes insects get in regardless, and then you have to take more drastic steps to control them. So there are pheromones that have been developed for most of the common stored product insects. Now, pheromone is a scent, it's a chemical scent that the insect emits. Usually it's used for mating purposes. So when you put a vial of that pheromone into a sticky trap like this, that attracts all of the males. That vial smells like a female that's ready to mate. And the males will flock towards that scent and get stuck in the trap. Now, you're probably not going to eliminate a stored product infestation by using traps alone. But what this does do is tell you that, number one, that you have a problem starting up. You know, you've caught 1 or 2 or 10 or 100 moths in there. You've got something going on. You need to do some further investigation. Number 2, it will tell you the extent of the problem. Now, if you're working out of your home or a very small building, you know, 1 trap is probably plenty. But we use these in massive food distribution centers where we have dozens or hundreds of these traps. And we can look at the number of moths caught in each trap every service, and it will clue us in as to where the infestation is starting from. So you can use these traps to narrow down where the source of the infestation is if you're in a large building with a lot of food packaging. There are also pitfall traps for crawling insects. So you'll get beetles crawling up into these, and there's a dome cover that goes over the top, keeps it from filling up with flour. So you can pop the dome off, look inside here. The beetles will be attracted to the pheromones or the food product that's inside here, fall in, they can't crawl back out. So this is a good trap for all sorts of beetles. Now, there are many different kinds of insect-like traps, and I'm not talking about the backyard bug zappers. You know, keep those outside by your campfire, that's fine. Inside, you want to use a professional grade insect-like trap. Now, most people don't want one of these hanging on the wall in their house. I get that, but there are some rather attractive sconce-looking ones that you could use inside your house if that's where you're storing your food and what you're trying to protect. But the more industrial versions like this put out ultraviolet light, which attracts most flying insects. And with a glue board behind there rather than a zapper, it will catch the insect so that you can pull the glue board out and identify what the insects are. And then you can go look at your food storage areas to see if there's an infestation going on. So very valuable tool from an insect standpoint here. Of course, nothing beats a good visual inspection. To do this, number one, you need to have access into all the areas you need to treat. You need to be limber because while standing up looking into a cabinet like this is good, getting down on your hands and knees and looking underneath equipment and underneath shelves is just as important, if not more so, because pests don't usually breed out in the open where we can see them. They're in hidden areas. So you need to be able to get up and down and in and out in between all of your equipment. And you need a good flashlight, you know, very, very bright flashlight so you can see into all these hidden areas. Sometimes an inspection mirror comes in very handy as well, so you can look underneath things without having to get down underneath it. Now, threshold, if you're farmers, you probably already know this term, but the action threshold is basically at what point do you apply a treatment strategy. So you're monitoring and you notice that the amount of moths you have in your barn where all your grain is stored is starting to build up. Now, if it costs you $5,000 to treat the barn, let's say, I'm just throwing random numbers out. Well, you're going to wait. If you see one moth in there, you're not going to spend $5,000 to treat the barn. But if you got so many moths that logic tells you you're going to lose $10,000 worth of grain if you don't treat, then obviously spending $5,000 makes sense. So that's the point with the thresholds. And if you haven't developed a threshold plan yet for your place of work or for your farm, it's a very good idea to think about that. And you could probably talk with your local extension agent or, you know, Autumn with Purdue here, and she can help you out with that.